New York Congressman Hakeem Jeffries is with me now, along with Ann Gearan from the Washington Post. Congressman, let me get your reaction first. The president obviously has denied repeatedly that there was any collusion. He denies that he ever did anything wrong. Now we have him, and NBC News has confirmed the existence of these notes taken from this meeting. He's with the Russians. He calls the FBI director a nut job, talks to them about what would be considered a fairly sensitive personnel matter, and then added, I feel great pressure because of Russia. That's taken off. Your reaction?
Well, it's another shocking development that indicates to some degree where Donald Trump's mind frame has been with respect to this investigation, and allows us to interpret that some of these actions are perhaps being done in order to thwart the ongoing criminal investigation that was being conducted by the FBI into possible collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians during the election. Is
that what you took away from the meeting that you were in today with Rod Rosenstein?
Well, what's clear from the meeting today is that the special prosecutor, Bob Mueller, will have full authority, resources, and discretion in order to follow the facts and pursue the evidence wherever that may lead. That should reassure the American people. The other thing that was interesting, and perhaps the most important thing for me that came out of the meeting, was that the Deputy Attorney General made clear that in his view, based on the Department of Justice regulations, the president does not have the power to fire the special counsel. And that's particularly important because we've seen a willingness to terminate individuals who the president apparently believes are too close to getting to his folks or in the context of this Russian investigation. He fired U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara after it was publicly revealed that his office was investigating close allies of the Trump administration. He fired Acting Attorney General Sally Yates shortly after she had conversations with the White House that suggested that her belief that Michael Flynn may be a Russian asset. And of course, he fired James Comey, who was leading the investigation, the criminal inquiry into his campaign.
The McClatchy also had one of these three big stories today, and it's about the possibility of also pursuing a cover-up. Not that this is an active part of the investigation, but it looks like it could be a part of this investigation. Elijah Cummings, apparently one of the people they talked to about this. Did you take that away from the meeting as well?
Well, what I took away from the meeting was that the special prosecutor would have the ability to look at both the underlying criminal case, which is the possibility of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, as well as other things that may have occurred related to a possible cover-up, obstruction of justice, abuse of power, presidential interference that would be inappropriate.
And Gearan, you know what's interesting is that I talked to a number of the members of Congress as they were coming out of that meeting, and a lot of them expressed their hope that now that Bob Mueller is going to be taking charge of this investigation, that they could, and if the White House was able to reset and go into this foreign trip, name a new FBI director, which obviously did not happen today, that perhaps they could get back to the business that they want to be doing in the halls of Congress. What do you make of these three big breaking stories, including one by your newspaper today?
Yeah, I mean, I make that they were clearly speaking a couple hours before, what has become, really...
literally just a couple of hours before.
Right. Today's version of what has become daily revelations in a very fast-moving story. Certainly from the point of view of members of Congress, Republican and Democratic, this is a huge distraction, and even though the principal investigation is now clearly going to be the one housed through the Justice Department and not anything that Congress does, it's still a huge distraction. It takes an enormous amount of time and energy. On the Republican side, it takes an enormous amount of political energy. It's very complicated. It's obviously we're seeing that it is causing angst and some divided loyalty among some Republican members of Congress. I'm sure they would love nothing better than to talk about something else. They've got a budget coming out next week, something else. And from the White House perspective, they would love to talk about the trip that they're currently on. But this is clearly going to follow the president through every stop at that trip.
Yeah, let me ask you about that trip, because obviously this is very important. There isn't a stop stop. There isn't anything built in for optics here. There's real business that's going to be done here. And in addition to that, complicated stuff. What does this potentially mean for the focus of the president, for the focus of his staff, and for the way other foreign leaders and diplomats approach him?
Well, you know, I hesitate to say anything confidently about what it'll mean, because this White House is doing things very differently than past White Houses. The ordinary course of business for a White House foreign trip, particularly the president's first one, is that it is, you know, a very, very big deal, and every detail is managed, and clearly a lot of details have gotten away from them even before they've even arrived in Saudi Arabia. That said, his couple of days in Saudi Arabia will be very tightly managed by the Saudis. So there, I think, is a lot less room and chance while he's in Saudi Arabia that he will say something in the presence of the press, or that something else will happen, you know, to him or by him, except of course if he tweets, you know, while he's there, just simply because there isn't an opportunity really for him to say or do much while he's there. Clearly, developments will still happen here. It is the weekend; maybe they won't be moving quite as quickly, but it's entirely possible that the entire news cycle in the United States has nothing to do with his time in Saudi Arabia and the big speech he's going to give there on Islam and the future of that religion.
Congressman, Ann makes a good point about now the focus going to the lion's share of it anyway, to the Mueller investigation, and that's something that was expressed to me by the congressman coming out of that meeting that you were in with Rod Rosenstein. Having said that, there is still counterintelligence things that need to be looked at by Congress. Are you confident that those will move forward and will move forward in a way that you believe will get to the bottom of at least what Congress is charged with looking into?
I certainly hope so. I think many of us increasingly on the Republican...
Hope so or feel confident about it?
I certainly hope so. I mean, I think the House Intelligence Committee was off track for a while with the antics of the prior chairman. He's now recused himself, and it appears that things are back on track in terms of Democrats and Republicans working closely together. Many of us also still believe that Congress should enact an independent commission similar to what was done in the aftermath of September 11th, so we can convene a group of experts who can take a close look at what occurred as it relates to Russia's attack on our democracy, communicate that to the American people, and also figure out how do we prevent this from ever happening again. So there's still some unfinished business that needs to take place in order to deliver the type of transparency that our democracy requires and that the American people deserve.
Congressman Jeffries, thanks so much.